Two of the biggest elements of modern popular culture are TV and sport, and my guest this week, Bernd Reichart, has been a key executive in both. Bernd established himself in the TV business at Spanish broadcaster Antena Tres before returning to Germany to head up Vox and ultimately becoming RTL Group CEO. He now heads Football Management Group A22. In this episode of Here Comes Pod, Bernd shares his experiences in the TV business in Spain and Germany, the ambitions of A22, and why he believes European football needs to change. Enjoy. Hi Bernd, welcome to the pod.
Hey, hi Danny. Thanks for having me, and congratulations to your podcast. It's growing. The list of guests reached quite remarkable, and I'm happy to be here alongside a lot of appreciated companions of the entertainment industry.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's very kind of you. It's lovely to have you on board, and I always like to start with a fun question. And that question to you is this: you have had a very long and successful career in broadcasting with the RTL Group in particular. If you could have picked a football manager to run one of RTL's many channels, which manager and which channel would you choose?
I would give Jürgen Klopp a late night show for sure. He speaks his mind always pretty fearlessly. I like that a lot, and he has a strong opinion on stuff even far beyond football, which I like a lot. So he would be for a talk show or for a late night show. He would be my choice. Also, Tony Kroos fits in the same category. He has his own podcast, and he's also tackling popular, unpopular topics without being afraid of public opinion. I appreciate both of them. I would probably try to hire them.
Okay, very good. Well, they sound like fantastic future guests for this podcast as well. But we'll take one step at a time, one game at a time, as they say in the football world. Many people who choose sport as a profession grow up as passionate sports fans. Was that the case with you? And did that inspire you to enter the sports business with UFA Sports in Hamburg and then sports rights agency Sport 5?
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in a tiny little village in the southern part of the Bavarian Alps, close to the Swiss and Austrian border. So we were out all day practicing all kinds of sports. So skiing, tennis, but above all, football was part of my childhood, obviously. And since I wasn't good enough to make it my profession as a player, I then tried to get into the football industry in another professional manner. I was playing well, good enough to help me finance my university, or I also went to the US with a soccer scholarship for a year. But then UFA Sports was the way into a fascinating football world, which I always had that longing for.
In 2003, you opened the Madrid office of Sport 5. How did you find the transition from German life and business to the Spanish version of each?
Well, yeah, in sport, maybe it's particularly easy because sport is a universal language and it unites and it's cross-border per definition. But even culturally, I think German and Spain, we always get along. And I felt it was really easy. Then I also started my family, and I married my Spanish wife, and we had our first kids born in Madrid, raised nearby this Bernabeu. We hear the Bernabeu roaring and celebrating goals when we go to the balcony. So it was easy, but also it helped that I've been able to commit to Madrid in every aspect.
And next came a move to Spanish broadcaster Antena Tres, first as head of investor relations, and then from 2007 to 2013 as managing director multi-channel with responsibility for 5 free TV channels. Was there a steep learning curve in moving to oversee general entertainment channels?
Well, the big opportunity back then was that the arrival of digital terrestrial television, Spain also was moving into a multi-channel environment, which most of the other European TV markets already moved to via cable. So there were a lot of attractive slots still unoccupied in the ranking of channels. And so launching new propositions, trying to read the demand and the desire of the audience for new complementary or even niche offerings, to interpret that well and find your target group, find your content strategy, find a way to monetize and have a good ad strategy, do a branding effort in order to generate loyalty within your audiences. That was pioneer work, rather late in the evolution of broadcasting in Germany, in Europe, and that was a good opportunity to learn the business in a pioneer environment.
But it's interesting because you move from what you might call the more finance and corporate side to a more specifically programming side of things, and so that must have been quite an interesting transition.
As anybody who has a satisfying career, I was also lucky to have a mentor who knew what would be best for me. And so my CEO at Antena 3, Maurizio Carlotti, dear friend and a brilliant TV executive, he said, okay, you have to make one stop by and learn the financial background of corporate finance better. And so we're going to IPO, we're going to need somebody who's doing communication on IR, and I want you to take care of that. And then you learn about the different angle of how our business is analyzed. Somebody look at it from a content perspective, some look at it as an advertising perspective, some might have only questions about regulation, and others might be interested in the dividend yield of our company. So this is the best school. Do it 1, 2, 3 years, and you will be ready for whatever it takes later on. And I agree with him. It was a good school. It was a necessary school. And but then returning to the content and to the marketing part of the business was very welcome.
And so I guess that did help with your future progression within the group, because in 2013 you returned to Germany to join the RTL board and to become MD of one of RTL's channels, Vox. I always think that managers shepherd existing operations and leaders create change. Which of these objectives were you tasked with at Vox, and how did you set about achieving those objectives?
Well, arriving at Vox was, all stars aligned. Those moments where you have a great team, excellent existing brand, a solid ad market, and I was tasked to be bold and make aggressive, creative decisions to try to develop and extend Vox. And the magic of momentum. Once you start with a bet and as a dart player, with the first dart, if you hit bullseye or 60, I think is the maximum. If you hit the 60 and you get the next dart and you hit it again and you hit it again, then you just feel that it would be okay if I miss. So let's go one notch further. And so we in that period with a great team, we had a series of creative hits, and we explored new territories, and we made our first scripted show von Vox. And then, even if in a context of increased competition or technological change, there are a few things who are still true. If you hit the nerve of the public, of your audience, and you do well there, you grow. And so in that period of time, I think Vox was, to my knowledge, the most profitable broadcaster in all of Europe. And that was a really, really fun and exciting time.
Both Germany and Spain have significant domestic TV production industries, and you just referred to the success that you had at Vox with the original programming. Clearly, both sets of audiences respond very well to strong local language shows. Equally, or certainly it's the case that English language programming, especially US movies and series, have always been important to those broadcasters' schedules. How did you find navigating the US studio world, and how did you strike a balance between local and international programming on the channels that you were responsible for?
you have to listen to the audience, and it got clear that streaming services offer a much more convenient way of offering US scripted shows than a weekly linear program ever could be. And you have to realize that. And so, yes, over the time, there have been more and more primetime slots which were reserved to US content. Like Dr. House was really big on RTL, and CSI was a big column in the grid of Vox. So yes, they were substituted by original domestic programming, and that was a huge investment, and that was it was the beginning of the war of content, because at the beginning, the streaming services who came to Germany or came to Europe, they were focusing on high-end scripted programming. But very soon they actually moved to every genre, documentaries, comedy, reality formats. So there was you have to be competitive in all of that area, and that was a huge challenge. On the same time, we also invested in our own streaming services, and we have been able to then offer US series with high volume and a loyal audience via our streaming service as well. So the guidance is always connect with your audience, listen to their demand, and then try to be a trustworthy deliverer on their demand.
You moved into the RTL Group CEO role in 2019. For the last decade, senior leaders at all traditional broadcasters have faced the dilemma of investing in new digital distribution and disruptive business models whilst trying to protect the audiences and existing cash flows from linear distribution and the traditional spot advertising business. From your perspective, how did you set out to manage this change from a successful legacy model to a new model?
Well, first you have to start internally. You have to modernize also the corporate structure and the corporate culture, and flatten hierarchies, and really invite everybody to be aggressive and creative in order to defend that position, which is challenged on the ad market with the Googles and Facebook of the world, and on the content market with Netflix and Amazon and Disney of the world. So yeah, there was a new way of competitive tension, but still you can rely on an incumbent position, which is helping you by enabling you a huge number of big properties and brands. The main channel was to discover what is their added value for a new way of distribution and a new way of connecting them with people. So our streaming platform RTL Plus, which we launched back then, who is now in pretty fast move to 4.5 million paying subscribers in the German market. Of course, there was a huge investment in original content, which was exclusive for RTL Plus. But on the other hand, discovering what part of a property are people willing to enter or convert into a subscriber, that is also really exciting. So I know Good Times, Bad Times, the soap is pre-debuting for subscribers a week ahead of their linear programming. We did that pretty early back in time. And it worked. And we discussed a lot about, then there will be spoilers and nobody will watch it anymore linearly. But it was more like the foundation of a community, people who gathered on the streaming service to feel as specially treated fans of a show. And so, again, it's being empathic and listening to the audience. That's the best guidance you can ever get.
So in July 2022, you became CEO of A22. A sports management company that's seeking to reshape European club football because it believes that its foundations are under threat. Now, it's a task that requires you to be an agent of change and market disruptor, which is what we've just really touched on in terms of the TV world as well. And so can you draw on that experience from the TV business to lead the kind of radical shift in the organization of European club football, which is really being proposed by A22?
Well, yeah, I think that they're a part of my past or my expertise that might contribute to that. The goal we pursue at A22, there are a lot of ways where the football business and the entertainment business show some similarities, and it's all about trying to create and generate enthusiasm and excitement. with good football or with good entertainment. And the best case, it makes people laugh, be excited, or even cry. So it's a lot about emotions. It's a lot about reaching millions, and in both industry, it's in the end the people who make it. It's a people's business. You manage talent, you manage creative, and you depend also on their performance and on their output. So I always felt comfortable in between those both worlds, and wherever they merge, I feel particularly at home. So yes, we're trying to modernize, challenge the status quo, and advance now European club football, and that's an exciting challenge.
And can you just explain a little bit more about A22 and how it came about and this kind of direction of travel that it wants to go in?
Well, A22 is a sports promoting agency, and it was founded when the 12 clubs who in April 21 communicated their desire to propose an alternative European midweek club competition. And so A22 back then had the mandate from the European Super League company, as they have today, and to try to explore and promote that project in legal aspects, in financial aspects, in trying to make proposals on how the competition would look like, and how the governance of European club football could improve from its current 70-year-old monopoly situation.
I don't want to delve too deeply into the European Super League period because it's been talked about so many times and there's so many opinions on it. So we won't get into any particular detail there. But certainly from an English or UK perspective, there was a very negative supporter reaction. Does that show that the supporters can be a very important part of any change that happens in the governance of football and perhaps need to be more central to any process that looks at changing things? The sort of things that fans tend to care most about are things like lower ticket prices, the cost of pay TV subscriptions, or the cost of watching TV at home, manageable kickoff times so they're not having to try and get home at 10 o'clock at night to, sort of distant parts of the country. That's seems to me a big part of the change that supporters, who are the customers of the game, really care about. And to what extent can you build that into what you're trying to achieve at A22?
I totally agree, Danny. We talked about similarities, talking about differences between entertainment and sports. It's probably the passion of the fans. Fandom as itself. You can be a fan of Steven Spielberg movies or all Pixar movies, or you can even be a fan of Reese Witherspoon. But if you don't like her character on the morning show, you start watching after episode 1. But if you're a fan of Borussia Mönchengladbach, even if you don't like their performance of last week's match, you are there again and again and again. And I think fan centricity has to be one of the pillars of every proposal to newly shape European club football. And I think everybody at A22 and the ESL admit that they didn't always explain well what their proposal will look like and can be. They also haven't been heard, and it was conditioned the way they had to propose more than 2 years ago their proposal, and that's why I joined in July last year. We want to have that dialogue. We want to listen to stakeholders and to fans, and we want to design a proposal which has a broader consensus, and fan centricity goes also hand in hand with fan sovereignty. Because if the clubs are the ones who are able to defend and to design their own future and their own destiny, in the end, fans are fans of clubs. They're not the fans of a private association who is having their headquarters in Lyon. They are fans of clubs. And so I think it goes hand in hand. And I think listen to the fans and also their trouble in continue to have access to football, and how they have to jungle with 3, 4, 5 pay TV subscriptions in order to follow the team. That's a big problem, which I would also be keen on working on solutions.
I guess there's a question that springs to mind when we talk about football and the current status of football? And it seems like a strange question, but actually one I think that's becoming more pertinent, which is I'd be very interested to get a sense of what you believe the purpose of a football club is. I mean, historically, football clubs were, I think, judged by owners and supporters alike based on sporting merit, how they did. And I think a lot of fans feel that sporting achievement and trophies are the measurement of success, and they value the camaraderie in the community that football clubs give them. But sometimes it feels that for an increasing amount of owners of football clubs, and to some extent associations, generating long-term asset value and projecting national identity and perhaps even values for political ends has become important for a bunch of people in the football world. And so has the consensus around what football clubs are there for and what they do and how you measure them, has that started to break down, do you think?
I think football has a political dimension, whether or not they like it or they don't like it. And I think even European club football could and maybe even should contribute even more to the European idea or the European identity or the European cohesion. I think that's a wonderful opportunity also to find purpose. Apart from that, I think the purpose of clubs is try to, as I said before, try to engage, try to connect with fans. And if this fan base is growing and we all take pride in that football is the one and only true global sports, we just shouldn't take that as a given fact. And we should worry about, and that's the club's responsibility as well, are we able to continue to connect with the 14-year-old boys and girls around the world and connect them to the game we all love? And how do we able to connect fans with the men's and the women's game around the world, and how we prepare a stage that is big enough to make sure that football continues to compete with this multitude of entertainment opportunities every young European has at a fingertip right now. That's why we are talking about better competition in terms of the quality of matches, in terms of that you have to have the intensity of eye-level competitions and play consequential matches from the first match day to the last match day, and this is what the European Super League project initially was all about and is still all about.
And do you think, though, that because you're talking about things on a regional European level, that there are a couple of challenges? One is that consequential matches are often local derbies rather than matches that take place between teams who are geographically split apart. But also within the group, there are quite different views on how football should be organized. So, for example, in the Bundesliga, you have majority ownership by fans. And recently, the Bundesliga collectively voted not to have private equity invest in their media rights. Whereas in, let's say, the English Premier League, you do have now quite significant private equity participation in football teams. So does that make it challenging to find a consensus that brings everybody together?
Well, the local derbies which you're talking about, they will continue to be played on the weekends in the domestic leagues. We are not proposing that anybody should break away or leave its domestic leagues. We propose an alternative to the UEFA club competitions played midweek. We think that they should be club run, club governed, and they should be in a more exciting competition format. And I think if you talk to a number of clubs outside even the big four, big five leagues, you see the desire that they want more Europe because their competitiveness of smaller leagues are just currently under a lot of pressure. If you look at what the transfer windows shows and how the Premier League is spending more on transfers than the other next four leagues together, those are developments which people have to observe and react to. And the possibility of having a strong, substantial exposure to a European competition, not a one-off in the in the UEFA Champions League, but a sustainable, predictable European path year in, year out. That is a very attractive alternative to a number of clubs, and not only the top tier clubs. We are always talking about a multi-divisional system, which we would like to propose to football stakeholders anytime soon. And you know that we are currently ahead of an important ruling of the European Court of Justice. And in the meantime, we continue to reach out to fans, to clubs, to stakeholders, to politicians, to see how that proposal can evolve. And it has already evolved in some key aspects.
So you talk about a competition that's run by the clubs themselves. And I guess the clearest example of a football league run by its constituent clubs, or one of them anyway, is the English Premier League. Why do you think the Premier League has been so successful? And has its success contributed to some of the imbalances in European football that you mentioned in terms of transfers and in terms of just the general perception that the Premier League has a disproportionate power in European football?
Well, the Premier League and any other big European league is club governed. It's club run. It was roughly 20, 30 years ago when the federations handed over the organization of the domestic league competition to the DFL, the Serie A or La Liga, only on a European level. It seems that only the federation, the private association in Switzerland, is able to not only regulate, but also organize and run as a monopolist club competitions, and that's under scrutiny. And this is where we want to present a potential alternative. So we want to be part of a solution of problems you also addressed. The English Premier League is a good example of a club-run organization which is growing and having extended also its global followership. It's a competition who is week after week offering the best matches again and again from the first match day to the last, which is something we believe the Champions League is not delivering on. And as of today, European football cannot permit itself not unleashing all its potential. That is why innovation also comes from competition and from alternatives and from challenging ideas. And we don't ask for much more than being able to present them to clubs without clubs then being sanctioned.
And then talking about challenging the existing structures, do you have a sense of the new Saudi Pro League's potential impact on European football in terms of being a challenging league?
I'm convinced that if the European club football is really, really unleashing all its potential and is delivering on the demand expressed by fans, but also to be seen by fans, you just have to see what good European club matches draw in terms of audiences and what unconsequential first round matches of clubs in different situations in its group phase, what they draw. So if we manage, then I think the European club competition is unbeatable, and it's the best club competition in the world. But it has to evolve as well.
So you don't think all the best players in Europe are going to end up playing in the Middle East, and ultimately that becomes
no? Because
I
think apart from money, the best football players continue to be also really, really, really keen on fame and glory. And in the big global clubs, the European clubs with a lot of history, there are so many of them. They are together building a competition that is unrivaled globally.
One of the things, the elements that A22 has proposed in terms of financial sustainability is that clubs should only spend a fixed percentage of their annual football-related revenue on player salaries and net transfers, with appropriate provisions for smaller clubs and transition rules. So that's the sort of salary cap that we see in, for example, US sport, that has given those leagues a lot of success in terms of financial sustainability. and seems to be really liked by the increasing amount of American owners in European football. The original European Super League was pretty castigated for proposing a kind of NFL-style closed league, which is another one of those US-style organizational structures that for us in Europe just doesn't make sense. And I think everybody involved understands that you've moved away from that, and that was a mistake. But there are other US-style sustainability models that European football could consider, for example, like a salary cap based on pooled revenues rather than individual club income. Do you think there's any merit in looking at just everybody putting all their money together and then distributing the money to create more of a level playing field that might give the kind of balance that you're talking about?
Well, I think at least it's a professional obligation to understand and to look at American models or in sports globally as well. But not everything is culturally transferable. And I think being aware of the heritage of football and how it was developing over the years in the core of Europe is important. But financial fair play is a key element of our proposal, and it was back then. You're perfectly right that the permanent membership or the semi-hybrid model was reassessed, and we are talking about a completely open, meritocratic competition with no permanent members. But financial fair play and the restriction of spending into wages and salaries based on a ratio with revenues is a proposal which wasn't discussed to the extent, and it should have been discussed back then. Some of the core ideas of the initial proposal was now adopted by UEFA, but the question is whether or not they really executed to the extent they should be, because overspending and investing unlimited resources of some state-owned clubs is also part of the imbalances you mentioned in your previous questions, and that's a concern for competing clubs, but that's also a concern for fans.
Okay, well, as you said, there is an ECJ judgment coming down soon, so we'll look out for that, and then I guess that will be the next phase. But I'd like to bring things back to, again, always a fun question to finish off with, and to get into the core of football. So to bring things back to the game on the pitch, if you could pick your fantasy five-a-side football team from the players that you've seen play live, which 5 players would you choose?
Okay, I've seen live, so I can leave aside Beckenbauer and Stefano and Pelé and Cruyff. That's good. That's helpful. I leave aside also players who are actually currently playing, because they still decide whether or not the GOAT is Messi or Ronaldo. So retired player I have seen play, that would be rather easy. I would say Buffon, Roberto Carlos for sure. 2 midfielders, Zidane for sure. And I go for Maradona. And the best striker I've ever seen, Ronaldo Nazario da Lima.
Okay, very good. Well, Bernd Reichart, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. It's been fascinating to see somebody who has straddled all sides of the, let's say, the broader entertainment business. And we'll certainly look out for more news and the evolution of the thinking at A22.
Thank you very much. I keep you posted.